Happy Sunday, YouTube. It is I, Darth Cobain17 back, and it's been a while since my last review, kind of pop culture video, whatever, um, because we didn't really complete any games recently. We didn't watch any movies. I've just been reading through a lot of books and finally have built up enough stuff to do a video, so let's take it away. First up, I saw this at Indigo when I went a few weeks back and thought, oh yes, it will be mine because I love the movie. It is the prequel to Alita Battle Angel called Iron City. This takes place really not that long before the movie, and Earth is a post-apocalyptic kind of wasteland, and the entitled live in this sky city called Salem above the Earth, while all the riffraff are down on the ground in this Iron City, this community called Iron City. And the wars that happened years ago, called the Fall, there was tons of these floating cities around, but everything went to hell. There's not really many details on it, but you just kind of know this basic kind of aspect of the war. So this picks up not long, like I said, before the movie, and it just kind of details how Dr. Dyson Ido, who is a brilliant doctor who works on all the cyborgs that play motorball, as well as any other cyborgs who need help, to keep their parts up to date and help keep them living and working and trying to get by as best they can. How he and his wife, God, I forget her name now. She's a bitch. How they split up after they were forced out of Salem. They used to live above in the Sky City, but it's supposed to be this perfect place. And when they had a daughter with a disability, they were kicked out of Salem and sent down to Iron City. And then that's, when we saw them or Dyson Ido in the movie, he was working at his clinic helping repair cyborgs, and eventually that's how he finds Alita and builds her out of the scrap he finds in the yards. So this is just basically kind of an introduction to these characters, story of the background of how they were kicked out of Salem and ended up in Iron City, how their split happened after after their daughter's death, and his wife couldn't handle it. She couldn't handle her being disabled in the first place, but when she got killed in an accident at the clinic, it was the last straw, and she left, and she went to Vector, who owns one of the motorball teams and is kind of the bigwig in Iron City that is the link between Salem and Iron City. And it also introduces Hugo, the young kid that kind of helps Dyson Ido, but actually is a little more nefarious than he seems at first. So it's just kind of an introduction to all the characters, how they all came to be in this position before the movie actually starts. So kind of a nice little prequel story to the movie. Following up something I recently read, I reread The Lost World by Michael Crichton, the follow-up to Jurassic Park. And in this book, I think it takes place 6 years after the incident at Jurassic Park. Maybe I'm give or take a year or two. And the main character is Dr. Ian Malcolm, who in the movie was played by Jeff Goldblum, and he is the mathematician, the chaotician. He's on the lecture circuit. He has stayed mum about Jurassic Park. He hasn't let anything go because they all signed non-disclosure agreements and all that shit. But people know that something happened on this island. Went on, and he's on the lecture circuit like he usually is, talking about his latest theories and stuff like that, when he's challenged by a young paleontologist named Richard Levine, who is a rich, entitled kind of kid and is kind of brash, and the old guard of the professors or whatever kind of look down on him. He challenges Malcolm about the existence of a possible lost world with all of these new animals that are showing up on the coast of Costa Rica. And Malcolm's like, there's no such thing as a lost world or a dinosaur or all this shit, right? But he full well knows there is. So Levine catches up to him afterwards and is like, if I brought you proof that there is dinosaurs or some weird animal out there, will you help me? And Malcolm's like, sure, if you can bring me proof, go for it. Soon enough, Levine witnesses a carcass on the coast of Costa Rica, and he's like, holy crap, that's a dinosaur. So then he ferrets out the location of the island where these carcasses are coming from, washing up from, and mounts an expedition there. But he ends up getting stranded there. His guide gets killed, and he places a phone call back to the mainland, the States, and says he's in trouble. So all of a sudden Malcolm's like, oh crap, we got to mount a rescue mission for this guy. So it's Malcolm, a guy named Jack Thorne who makes special equipment for trips like this, specializes in field equipment, vehicles and stuff like that. His assistant Eddie Carr, and then a couple kids that were helping Levine, a couple public schoolers named Arby and Kelly, and then joining the trip later on is Sarah Harding, who is not sure exactly what she studies, behavior in wild animals, like she's in Africa studying hyenas or something like that at the time when Malcolm calls her about this, or somebody, I can't remember who calls her, but anyway, so that's the party that ends up on the island to try and save Levine. In the meantime, Lewis Dodgson, who we see in the first movie trying to steal those embryos from the original Jurassic Park, when he got Dennis Nedry to try and do that for him, he has also gained intel on this island and is mounting his own mission to go there and nab some dinosaur eggs to take back to his company Biosyn and pick up where InGen left off. So it's just these parties arriving on the island, one trying to save Levine, the other trying to gain dinosaur eggs, and of course all hell breaks loose and the dinos are all over them. And it basically in the end it just turns into a race for survival to get off this island and find a way out of this nightmare. The events in the movie compared to the book are very different. The book is very I want to say grittier maybe or something like that, but either way they're very different. Like in the movie they have like that company leads a hunting party and they take all the dinosaurs, actually capture them, take them back to the mainland to put in a park they've built in Los Angeles or wherever, and then they get loose in the downtown core and whatever. Whereas this all takes place on the island, and I think the only scene that's really similar to the movie is when the baby T-Rex gets hurt. They bring it back to the trailer to try and heal it, and then the two T-Rexes show up and push the trailers over the cliff and all that shit. That's the only real scene, recognizable one, that takes place within both the book and the movie. So it's very different, but very good. And just like the first book, which gives a lot of information on the cloning process, or a lot of biogenetic kind of research and DNA and stuff like that. This one's also very informative, and they talk a lot about extinction and different issues around that. So Michael Crichton was always really good at making his books entertaining and exciting, but also very informative, right? You always feel like you learn something from his books. So another fantastic book by him. Can't go wrong with anything in the Jurassic Park lexicon, that is for sure. This book, many years ago when I was early on in my Star Wars expanded universe book journey, there was a book series for younger readers, which they're way beneath my level, but they're still Star Wars adventures that I want to read, right? So I had no shame in buying them. And there was one series called Jedi Quest, written by Jude Watson. And I think there was 10 books in the series. And for some reason, I could never find the third book. Like, I just never found it. And I'd go online at times, and I couldn't really find it there. So just a couple weeks ago, I just typed it into Amazon randomly, and they had one used copy that was acceptable from somewhere. And I was like, purchase. It was only $15. I was like, go. And it's Jedi Quest number 3, The Dangerous Games. This series chronicles Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi's adventures between The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones as Anakin's growing into his Jedi knighthood. And in this particular adventure, they go to the planet, I think it's called Euceron or something like that, or Eucharon, where the Galactic Games are taking place, which happens every 7 years, and competitors from all around the galaxy enter in it in a quest for glory. And so the government on Euceron is very militaristic, and what we say goes around here, and they're anticipating trouble at the games, so they've requested Jedi presence to try and calm things and make sure bad shit doesn't happen. So not long after they're there, a couple other Jedi teams are there that Anakin knows these apprentices. One's one of his good friends, another one is kind of a rival. And soon enough, they find some trouble. There's rumored to be an illegal pod race going on the planet during the games. So that's got Anakin's interest piqued, and so he goes to investigate that while Obi-Wan goes and does some other stuff. And so Anakin gets caught up with, he finds the pod where the pod race is happening, and he gets caught up with a brother team that are hoping to win the race so they can win the freedom of their sister, who has been taken kind of captive by Sebulba and his son Hecula. So Anakin's old pod racing rival is in the story too, which is kind of cool. So Anakin wants to throw himself into this situation head first, help these brothers win the race and get their sister back, and take down Sebulba and all that stuff, right? So, which he knows maybe isn't right. That's not the Jedi way to do such a thing, but he can't help himself, and Obi-Wan knows that too. But in the meantime, they've uncovered some other stuff that there's supposed to be a couple of fixed events at the games, which could bring ruin down on a whole bunch of levels. So Obi-Wan and Anakin also have to investigate this, and as the story goes on, everything unravels, and they find this big plot to disgrace a bunch of senators that are voting against the Commerce Guild on a certain issue that's coming up in the Senate. So the whole plan behind these fixed events and the pod race and everything was a setup by the Commerce Guild to disgrace these senators and bring them down so that they could pass this bill or whatever they were up to. So really short books and stuff, and for young readers, but again, it's a Star Wars story. I want to know it, so that's why I buy them. Next up, another Star Wars thing, Galaxy's Edge, A Crash of Fate. Galaxy's Edge is the kind of the new area in the Star Wars universe where they built that ride at Disneyland. It's the one in California, where you can ride in the Falcon and all that stuff. The planet is called Batuu, and the area in particular is called Black Spire Outpost on this planet, which is a very rural planet. And I read another book called, what was it called? Was it just called Black Spire or something like that? So I have read a book already on this area and an adventure there where the Resistance set up a cell to hopefully strike back against the First Order. So if you remember that one, but the one takes place, I think, after that's already happened, and it starts with a bit of a flashback to two kids, Jules, his real name is Julian, and his friend Izzy. Izzy and Jules are just, I think, 5 or 6 at the time, and they're best friends. They spend all their time together, but then one night, Izzy's parents rush her out of her bedroom onto the ship and say, "We're leaving for good. It's our time to go," right? So then Izzy suddenly is torn away from Jules. They never see each other again until maybe 13 years later. She's 18, and she's got caught up with this group of smugglers led by this kind of vicious woman named Anatola, and Izzy's love interest Damar is in this group also, and but she feels like she doesn't fit in. And then one night on her birthday, the crew kind of cuts her out of things and says, "You're sitting this one out, Izzy. We'll see you around." So then she's like, "What the fuck," right? And after this bar brawl erupts at the cantina that they're at, this Rhodian confronts her and says, "I know you. I know that ship. Yeah, that's your mom's ship." And her parents are dead at this time. He says, "I got a job for you if you're interested." And after just losing her crew and everything like that, she's like, "Yeah, I got to pay the bill somehow and maybe make him a name for myself," right? So he's like, "You just got to deliver this briefcase to a guy on Batuu named Doc Ondar, an Ithorian that works at this little junk shop, and that's the job." So all these years later, Izzy's finally going back to Batuu. And in the meantime, Jules has grown up kind of a laborer or a farmer, helping his sister out and on the farm and stuff like that, and is just an all-around good guy, known around Black Spire Outpost as a good guy, and everybody loves him. But he just so happens to be running some errands for Doc Ondar on the day Izzy shows up, and they literally run into each other. And after that, it's a constant battle between Izzy's, she doesn't want to admit it, but her infatuation with Jules, which is very much reciprocated, which wars against her not wanting to let him get too close and discover the person she's become and stuff like that, and her insecurities. So it's kind of, but things transpire to keep them together on the planet as weird situations that just keep delaying her completing this job and making a departure from the planet, just keep them together throughout the day. And as things unravel, they get a lot more dangerous, but at the same time, as things are getting more dangerous, things are getting more intense between the two, and they're both finally starting to let their feelings in and known towards each other. So in the end, her former crew, led by Anatola, end up on Batu to do a job, and the final scene kind of unfolds on a farm where Jules used to work, as he tries to save his sister, the farm, Izzy, everybody. He tries to save, or sorry, not Izzy, but a whole bunch of stuff that he tries to save. Him and Izzy have to team up in the end with some of his friends on the planet and stuff like that, and they eventually save the day. But in the end, Izzy goes to take off before changing her mind and having a happy little ending, where the two of them get together and start their life together in the end. So it was kind of it was a neat story. It was a nice story because there was lots of adventure and craziness. But it's nice to see the two of them, rekindle everything and stay together rather than something tragic happening, which happens a lot in Star Wars, you have to admit. Which is part of what makes it awesome and realistic too. Last thing, finished the second season of Star Wars Resistance. Unfortunately, also the last season, for whatever reason. But in the second season, it's mostly chronicles the crew of the Colossus as after they fled the First Order at the end of the first season. It's just an ongoing adventure as the Colossus keeps on its journey to get away from the First Order, and they keep trying to find a new planet where they can call home and fly under the First Order radar, stay hidden, be safe, get on with their lives, right? But of course, with each place they try and set down or something happens, whether it's the locals putting up a fuss, the First Order catching up, yada yada, something happens and they have to continually stay on the move. And of course, as all this is happening, there's other little subplots going on, like Tam, who deserted the Colossus to go fly for the First Order. She gets caught up in some of the battles, survives, and eventually, seeing how the First Order operates, she eventually begins to realize that, oh shit, I made a mistake. I should have stayed on the Colossus with my actual friends, not come to these faceless buttholes that, would shoot you in the face as soon as look at you, right? So she starts to have second thoughts and wants to engineer an escape out of the First Order. We finally get to see... I forget her name. Kaz's little buddy there, one of the aces as well, the daughter of the captain of the Colossus. God, I totally forget her name right now. But her mom and wife of the captain finally shows up after she's been talked about and joins the team, and a bunch of other stuff too. So in the end, the season wraps up with a big battle against the First Order where they get Tam back into the fold, and a decision is made by the Captain Doza, Tora Doza, that's her name. But Captain Doza is like, you know what? After I've seen everything that's happened here, everybody's committed. We're no longer running anymore. We're going to stand up against the First Order, and that's kind of where things close off for the series and the season, or the season and the series, I guess. But I really liked the series. It was an interesting style of animation. Bunch of cool new characters, and just again filling in some stuff between the movies in the Force and in that third trilogy. Now it starts kind of during the events of the Force Awakens, and when the First Order blows up the Hosnian Prime system and the seat of the New Republic, and in the end here, when this series concludes, it's I think it takes place sometime during the Rise of Skywalker, the Rise of Skywalker, I think. So it takes place over a lot of that time during that Force Awakens, Last of the Jedi, and the Rise of Skywalker sort of thing. So it fills in some gaps there with some cool little stories and stuff. So, but yeah, that's all. A lot of Star Wars stuff today, but that's never a bad thing since it's probably the best thing going. But yeah, I'll be back again in the near future, hopefully, with probably a lot more books, because I just went to Indigo again today and bought a shitload more. So until then,